Cedric Waverley had learned before his 10th birthday that the world rarely showed mercy to boys without parents. By the age of 21, he no longer expected kindness from strangers or fortune from fate. Victorian England admired polished titles and inherited wealth, yet it often overlooked quiet honesty. Cedric possessed neither a noble surname nor overflowing coffers, only an unwavering sense of dignity that no hardship had managed to steal. Each dawn found him crossing London's mist-veiled streets with worn boots and a satchel full of borrowed books, determined to earn another day's bread through tutoring children and copying legal documents for solicitors who barely remembered his name. Though poverty shadowed every step he took, Cedric refused to surrender his gentle nature. He greeted flower sellers with warm smiles, helped elderly neighbors carry parcels without expecting payment, and secretly left coins beneath the pillows of children sleeping in the parish orphanage where he had once lived. Those small acts of compassion never changed his circumstances, yet they preserved something infinitely more valuable: the belief that hardship should never harden the heart. Across the countryside, several hours from London's restless streets, stood Everley Manor, an immense estate embraced by ancient oaks and carefully sculpted gardens. Its owner, Duchess Arabella Everley, possessed more wealth than many noble families combined. At 54, she carried herself with quiet elegance, silver woven gracefully through chestnut hair, her posture regal without ever becoming proud. Society praised her impeccable manners at public gatherings, yet whispers always followed after she departed. Some pitied her for remaining a widow so long. Others mocked the thought that a woman of her age could still possess dreams beyond managing estates and attending charity galas. They never saw the woman behind the title. Arabella filled lonely evenings reading poetry beside crackling fireplaces, writing letters to hospitals, orphanages, and schools she secretly financed. She never attached her name to donations, because gratitude was never her purpose. Helping others reminded her that her own solitude could still produce hope for someone else's tomorrow. Nevertheless, every echoing corridor within Everley Manor reminded her that generosity could not replace companionship. A legal complication soon threatened everything she had spent decades protecting. An outdated inheritance clause declared that if the Duchess died without a lawful husband sharing responsibility for the estate, several distant male relatives could challenge ownership of Everley lands. Those ambitious cousins had no interest in preserving Arabella's charities, or caring for the villagers whose livelihoods depended upon the estate. They wanted only the fortune. Her trusted solicitor presented the painful truth with reluctant honesty. "The simplest protection," he explained quietly, "is marriage." Arabella stared through the library window toward children laughing beyond the gardens. The thought felt absurd. She had buried her husband decades earlier, and believed romance belonged entirely to memory. Yet surrendering the estate would destroy countless lives that depended upon her stewardship. Meanwhile, Cedric faced a crisis of his own. A dishonest landlord falsely accused him of unpaid rent, while debts inherited from the orphanage's collapsed finances left creditors demanding impossible sums. Though innocent of wrongdoing, he lacked the influence needed to defend himself. Bankruptcy promised not only homelessness but permanent disgrace. When the solicitor arranging Arabella's legal affairs learned of Cedric's reputation for integrity, an extraordinary proposal emerged. The Duchess required a trustworthy husband in name. Cedric required protection from ruin. The arrangement offered security for both, though affection seemed impossible. Cedric initially refused. "I cannot marry for comfort," he said firmly. "Marriage deserves sincerity." The solicitor answered with equal calm. "Her Grace asks for respect, not pretense. She seeks a partner of honorable character. Nothing more." After sleepless nights filled with prayer and uncertainty, Cedric accepted, believing sacrifice preferable to disgrace. He convinced himself that gratitude could replace youthful dreams, even if love never entered the bargain. The wedding remained astonishingly quiet despite attracting enormous public fascination. Newspapers printed exaggerated illustrations portraying Cedric as a desperate fortune hunter. Aristocrats exchanged amused smiles behind embroidered fans. Some guests counted the 33 years separating bride and groom more eagerly than they admired the ceremony itself. Arabella noticed Cedric's lowered eyes whenever cruel whispers drifted across the chapel. Without speaking, she gently rested her gloved hand upon his arm before they exchanged vows. That simple gesture steadied him. After the ceremony, Everley Manor welcomed its unexpected master with polished halls, attentive servants, and lavish rooms unlike anything Cedric had ever imagined. Yet luxury offered little comfort, while uncertainty lingered between husband and wife. On their first evening together, Cedric awkwardly apologized. "I fear my presence has become another burden upon your shoulders." Arabella looked genuinely surprised. "You have added no burden," she replied softly. "Only another heartbeat beneath this roof." Her answer lingered in Cedric's thoughts long after the conversation ended. Days passed without conflict. Arabella never demanded obedience, nor reminded him of their unequal stations. She invited him to dine whenever he wished, encouraged him to continue tutoring village children, and insisted that every library shelf belonged to him as much as to her. Gradually, formal conversations lengthened into meaningful discussions. Breakfast became an hour devoted to literature. Afternoon walks explored the gardens while exchanging reflections upon history and philosophy. Cedric admired her thoughtful wisdom. Arabella quietly appreciated his curiosity, humility, and unwavering kindness toward everyone regardless of rank. One rainy afternoon Cedric accidentally discovered wagons delivering blankets, medicine, and books to nearby villages under anonymous instructions. When he learned Arabella personally funded every delivery, his understanding of her shifted profoundly. Behind the Duchess stood a woman, whose greatest joy came from easing burdens nobody else noticed. Arabella, in turn, observed Cedric repairing broken classroom desks with his own hands after teaching estate workers' children to read. Though now surrounded by wealth, he never behaved differently than the orphan who once possessed nothing except compassion. Mutual respect slowly replaced awkward obligation. One evening, as sunset painted the rose gardens with golden light, they paused beside an ancient stone fountain where climbing roses perfumed the cooling air. Neither hurried to break the comfortable silence. Finally, Arabella smiled with quiet sincerity. "This house had forgotten laughter before you arrived." Cedric met her eyes, seeing neither pity nor obligation within them. "For the first time," he answered gently, "it no longer feels like a place I merely live." The Duchess's smile deepened, carrying a warmth that neither of them yet understood, while somewhere beyond the blooming roses, destiny quietly began unfolding into something neither duty nor society had ever imagined. Months settled gently over Everley Manor, softening the awkwardness that had once filled its magnificent halls. Cedric and Arabella gradually discovered an effortless rhythm that neither had anticipated when they exchanged vows before skeptical eyes. Every morning began with tea in the sunlit conservatory, where they discussed estate matters before walking together through gardens bright with roses. Their conversations no longer felt careful or rehearsed. They spoke openly about childhood memories, favorite books, quiet fears, and hopes they had never confessed to another soul. What had begun as respect slowly matured into genuine companionship, and companionship quietly blossomed into something deeper that neither dared to name. Cedric soon became deeply involved in managing the duchy's charitable work. He visited village schools, expanded the library, repaired neglected cottages, and organized apprenticeships for orphan boys and girls. Arabella admired how naturally he listened to struggling families instead of merely offering money. He remembered names, celebrated small victories, and treated everyone with equal dignity. Watching him among the villagers reminded her why she had trusted a penniless young man more than countless titled gentlemen. The people living on Everley lands slowly stopped discussing their unusual marriage. Instead, they spoke about the restored schoolhouse, the improved harvests, and the children who laughed while carrying books Cedric had personally delivered. The estate no longer represented distant nobility. It had become a place where kindness flourished. High society, however, refused to change. At elegant gatherings, whispers followed them through glittering ballrooms. Noblewomen exchanged knowing smiles whenever Cedric entered beside his older wife. Wealthy gentlemen suggested that his youth had surely been wasted. Others insisted the marriage could never contain genuine affection. Among those critics was Lady Eleanor Ashcombe, a graceful widow only a few years older than Cedric. Admired for her beauty and fashionable charm, She believed the young duke by marriage deserved someone closer to his own age. She sought every opportunity to engage him in conversation during social events, complimenting his intelligence and subtly implying that his future could be brighter elsewhere. Cedric remained courteous but distant. "My place is beside my wife," he answered whenever conversations wandered toward improper suggestions. His quiet loyalty puzzled everyone. Arabella heard none of these exchanges directly, yet she noticed the lingering glances directed toward Cedric. Though she never questioned his character, doubt quietly settled inside her own heart. She convinced herself that loving him meant giving him the freedom she herself had lost years ago. One rainy afternoon, she entered the estate library carrying a small leather folder. Inside rested carefully prepared legal papers releasing Cedric from every marital obligation, while guaranteeing him financial independence. She placed the documents inside her writing desk, intending to present them only if he ever confessed unhappiness. Days later Cedric searched the library for estate maps before visiting neighboring farms. Opening the wrong drawer by accident, he discovered the neatly folded papers bearing both their names. His heartbeat slowed as he read every page. Arabella was willing to lose the only companionship she had found in decades, simply to protect his happiness. He quietly closed the folder without disturbing a single sheet. That evening he found her sitting alone beneath the ancient oak overlooking the western gardens. Sunset painted the sky in warm shades of amber, while birds settled peacefully among flowering branches. "May I join you?" he asked. She smiled gently. "You never need permission." For several moments they watched the breeze ripple through the lavender fields. Finally Cedric spoke. "I found something today." Arabella's hands tightened around the book resting upon her lap. "The papers," she whispered. He nodded. "I never wished for you to discover them like that." Silence lingered between them, before she gathered enough courage to continue. "When we married, I believed I was asking too much of someone so young. You have given this house laughter, hope, and purpose. If one day you desire another life, someone younger, someone who can offer you children and ordinary happiness, I can never stand in your way." Her voice trembled despite every effort to remain composed. Cedric looked at her with quiet astonishment. "You believe I stayed because I had nowhere else to go?" She lowered her eyes. "I feared obligation might resemble affection." He gently reached for her hand. "When I entered this house, I expected wealth without warmth. Instead, I found the kindest soul I have ever known." Tears shimmered within Arabella's eyes. "You never judged my poverty. You never treated me as lesser. You trusted me before I believed I deserved trust. Every good thing I have done these past months was possible because you believed in me first." She tried to speak, but emotion stole her words. Cedric carefully removed the folded papers from his coat pocket. "I carried these here because I wanted you to see my answer." Without hesitation, he tore the documents into small pieces that drifted gently across the grass like pale autumn leaves. "I am not here because I must remain," he said softly. "I am here because every day beside you has taught me what love truly is. Love is not measured by youth, beauty, or society's approval. It is measured by peace, trust, kindness, and the quiet joy of walking through life beside someone who makes your heart gentler." A single tear escaped down Arabella's cheek. "No one has ever spoken to me that way." "They should have," Cedric replied. "You have spent years giving happiness to others while expecting none for yourself." Unable to hide her emotions any longer, Arabella stepped forward and embraced him. Cedric wrapped his arms around her with quiet certainty, holding her as though he had finally found the home he had searched for since childhood. When they slowly parted, he lifted her hand and kissed it with deep respect before gently pressing a kiss against her forehead. "I choose you," he whispered. "Today, tomorrow, and every day God grants us." The following spring their estate hosted its largest village celebration in generations. Children from the schools they had built filled the gardens with music and laughter. Families once burdened by poverty smiled with renewed hope. No one celebrated the difference in their ages anymore. They celebrated the difference they had made together. As twilight settled across Everley Manor, Cedric and Arabella walked hand in hand through the blooming rose garden, where their friendship had first begun. The same fountain shimmered beneath the fading sunlight. "You once thanked me for bringing laughter back into this house," Cedric said quietly. "And you brought life back into my heart," Arabella answered. He smiled, kissed her forehead once more, and together they continued down the flower-lined path, leaving behind every cruel whisper, and walking toward a future built not upon obligation, but upon the extraordinary love neither of them had ever expected.